Octavia Melody Applejack A True Love by Switch Double. One early afternoon, Octavia had just arrived back home to Ponyville after being having a concert in Camelot. She was so exhausted at when she arrived home with the train. She was so tired that she could barely walk back home. And then suddenly, some pony asked her if she needed help. She looked up and saw was Applejack. She was so tired she could barely speak. So Applejack took that as a yes and put her back her on. She put Octavia on her back and even put some of her and her shallow and walked up to Octavia's and Vinyl Scratch home. Luckily, Vinyl was home at the time, so when she saw Applejack standing at the door with Octavia at her back, she was very surprised seeing what happened. She thought something was wrong, but Applejack explained that Octavia was just so tired after she'd been, she was so tired, so she picked her up and took her home. She thanked Applejack for her help and she carried her all her way to her bed and just let her be beat it. Vinyl didn't wake up Octavia the rest of the night, the rest of the day. She actually was so tired she didn't even wake up for a moment during the whole night. Early next morning, Octavia woke up just fully rested and she actually had no knowledge how she ended up in her bed when she last time she remembers was actually standing at the train station. So she went down to the kitchen, finding Vinyl, reading the newspaper, eating some breakfast, and Vinyl said, "Good morning," and she said, "Good morning," and Jenny asked, "Vinyl, how did I get home?" "Wait, seriously? You don't even remember? How? What do you mean?" "Well, Applejack carried you all him home." "Wait, Applejack?" she asked. And then Vinyl just nodded. "Huh, I must be so tired that I didn't even remember that." So, since Octavia didn't have any concert or any practice for the day, she decided to eat some breakfast and go over to Sweet Apple Acres to thank Applejack about that she brought her home safely. And during all the way there, she was actually listening to the sound of around her to get some inspiration for new lyrics, to new songs she wanted to write. For the past few weeks, she had a little bit hard to write some new songs. She had actually lost some of her inspiration to make new songs. But it happened often to her from time to time, so it didn't bother her much. Luckily for some of the clients she played for, they actually preferred some of her old songs, which that was actually not a bad idea. She had plenty of old songs that she could use still. They were classics. But she wanted to make some new songs, so she walks around the town to listen to the sounds of the people are talking, how the birds singing, or how the sounds from the water fountain is flinging on the drops in the water. But when she arrived to the farm, she actually heard someone singing. She first stood there at the gate, listened, and she looked around the farm from the gate, but she couldn't see any ponies singing. She walked into the farm. She looked in the barn. Nothing. It was empty. She walked up to the house, but there was no pony there either. Then she walked up to most of the apple trees. Empty. Except for one thing. A basket full of apples just had been fallen there. She looked around and saw Applejack singing by herself by plucking some apples in another tree nearby. Applejack didn't notice Octavia was standing there. At first, she was actually just standing there, listening to Applejack singing, and she had just now noticed how beautiful her songs were. After the Applejack had suddenly put down the apples, then she noticed Octavia. She actually walked up to Octavia and asked how she were and if she was okay or something. Octavia nodded that he was okay and that she was just arrived to farm to say thank you that she took her home in safety and everything. And then suddenly Applejack asked her if she wanted to have maybe some fresh pie or something, just something to eat. And of course, Octavia could not resist a new baked apple pie from the apple family since they had one of the best pies ever. So she didn't mind to have some piece of pie with Applejack since they were good friends. They went to the kitchen and sit down and just talking. As on some pie, of course. At first they didn't speak much, but just Applejack asked how there was going on between the concerts and the writing on the songs or something. Octavia actually mentioned that the concerts are going really well. She gets a lot of pay for it, but writing new songs has been well difficult lately because she hasn't been much as get much inspiration. But then suddenly she mentioned the song that Applejack was singing at the trees. She asked where she had been learned that song, and she actually told her that was the song her mother used to sing to her when she was really. And Octavia actually mentioned that was a very beautiful song. And she asked if it was okay if she could write it to maybe hear this song again, or perhaps listen to read some of the songs her mother wrote down. But she then actually said all the songs that her mother sang to her, she didn't write down. That surprised Octavia. But so, how could you even remember all the songs without any problem? Applejack explained that she always remembered her songs that so well, because they were always there in her heart and were the strongest memories she has from her mother. So she asked then Applejack if she could sing some of the songs. Maybe she could get some inspiration from those songs to new songs of her own. Applejack didn't mind to try to help her, so she started singing some songs, and Octavia actually listened very carefully, and it worked. Now she had a plenty new songs in mind to write. She thanked Applejack for the pie and for the songs and for the company, and she went straight home and started writing down the songs. She wrote maybe 6 songs in 2 hours. It was one of the best she had wrote in a while. She even showed up the vinyl, that even the vinyl doesn't even do classic music, but she actually looked at them and she asked if she could play some of the songs just to see what she thinks. At first, Vinyl was just looked at her friend and was a bit skeptical. But she did, and after she played about 2 or 3 songs, she actually said even those songs were even that her type of style, but they were actually very beautiful songs. She asked where she get this inspiration from, and she explained it was actually from Applejack. Then Vinyl asked if Octavia had a crush on Applejack. And then Octavia started, why do you, why do you think that? That and that you blushing when every time you mentioned Applejack. She had actually even noticed herself. But don't worry, Octavia. I won't tell anyone. I won't. You have a pinky promise on that. Octavia felt relief and said thanks and went back to her work. A couple of days' work later, she actually went to Manhattan for a concert. She brought some of the old songs, and then she introduced the new songs to the audience that she had made several new ones. And she was very curious how the audience would react to the new songs, and she actually started playing them. And after she had played all the songs, she looked out at the audience, and it was quiet. It was silence, and then suddenly one to four, and then suddenly all the audience was cheering her. They actually loved her song so well. They even cheering, they said, again, again, again. She actually had never wasn't prepared for that as response for her songs. But she actually played the songs again, again, and she even after the concert was talks about some of the people from the audience said her songs was very, very original, very beautiful, and they have been one of the best she had been wrote in a long time. She thanked them, but at the same time as she was playing those songs, she actually was thinking about Applejack. About Applejack. At the same time when she was back home at the farm, she was working a lot of during the recent days because helping her to provide this apples to the family and to the market. But at some point there when she had some no work to do, she has no chores, Applejack was helping at the school as a teacher, but one of the students actually had asked Applejack if she had found her special song pony because the school is going to have a school dance and that the teachers are going to bring their special song pony, even the students ones, or even ask some of the other students. The other sort of teachers have actually thought of ask, had already asked some pony out, except for Applejack. She had been so busy at much of the teaching and at the farm, she hasn't even focused much on to find her date to school. And then she was started wondering who could she bring. It would be awkward if she brought her own brother as a date. And then she maybe asked some of the stallions around town, but most of them were already occupied during that time with the school dance, and some others were already engaged or married. So the number that she had to ask somebody was actually starting to get lower and lower. And then she probably would ask some friends from other towns, but at the time when she get the answer, they were actually very busy as well. But then Octavia had found out about this school dance and that Applejack didn't have any date. So she actually just randomly asked her if she could be her date. And Applejack didn't find it first, but the first didn't thought, okay, this is gonna be it's going to be a little bit weird, but she actually did said yes. And 2 days later, the school dance up happened. Applejack went to school with Octavia as a date. At first, she was a bit worried that ponies were starting to start to whisper, calling them, saying that they are dating or something. But in fact, no pony did. Only that they said that they were just beautiful together, and it was just very nice to see that Applejack had some pony with her to dance, and they both actually looked beautiful. There was nothing else much. There was just only one or two ponies that actually asked if they were dating, or it's just. But Applejack said she only asked that Octavia had been asking her if she could be her date for a dance, and she said yes. And the ponies actually accepted that. But during the dance, Octavia was standing at the fridge, at the food and some drinks. starting to see that Applejack was talking to her sister, Apple Bloom, and Twilight, one of the students there. She could even notice how much beautiful Applejack wore in the dress. All she just wanted to do was actually walk up to her and just kiss her. But she was so scared how Applejack would react if that was going to fragile their friendship. But Applejack just stood there. He didn't notice. But then Octavia actually did something that she never had expected to do. She took the courage and actually walked up to Applejack, took her hat, put it on herself, and kissed her. And then she actually took off the hat and ran away. She actually ran all the way from the castle, all the way from the school, and back home. Applejack stood there, blushing. She didn't actually know what just happened. It was like, what was just happened? The other students and the teachers were just standing there, unbelievable, nothing that they would expect. But Rarity, she was the only one who was just smiling and walked up to Applejack and said, "Who is the lucky girl?" And Applejack just looked at her and said, "Quiet, you." And the rest of the night seems to be going well, except for Applejack was standing at the most of her alone at the part of the dance. She didn't expect that to happen. Even though Octavia was back home, she didn't. When she arrived, Vinyl asked, "Oh, are the dance over already?" But she didn't say much. She closed the door and ran up the stairs and to her room, closed the door and locked it. And Vinyl was a bit curious what just happened. She said something wrong. She even walked up to the door, knocked on it, and asked, "Is something wrong, Octavia?" No, no, I'm just starting to feel tired, so I want to home earlier. Uh, okay. If you need anything, just call for me, and I will. And in fact, Octavia didn't leave her room or the house for several days. It actually took 3 days for Applejack to realize how much about this. She had been like pushing by her friends to go to see Octavia to ask her why she did it and what she did, what it means. And she actually walked up to her home, and Vinyl let her in. And at first, she had no idea what's going on until Applejack actually explained to Vinyl what just happened at the dance, and that was then the only explanation she needed. And she actually walked up to her room to Octavia's door, knocked on it, and the answer was, "No, Vinyl, I don't need anything. It isn't Vinyl." That was the point. The door slowly opened. In the crack on the door, she saw Applejack standing outside the door, and she was so white in her face. It was like she had been seeing a ghost. "May I come in?" she asked. At first, Octavia just wanted to close the door, lock it, and hide under her bed, but she didn't. She let her in, and they started talking. They talked for about almost an hour before they both left the room, laughing, smiling, blushing, and then suddenly kissing. Vinyl had no idea what's going on. She was actually standing below the stairs and just asked, "What just happened here?" It turns out Applejack had just asked Octavia to be her girlfriend. And from that moment, they actually been dating. But at some point, just about a couple of months later, something did happen. "What do you mean? Are you going to wait for a concert for a tour for a whole month without telling me this until now?" I'm sorry, Applejack. I didn't know for myself until this early this morning. But can you just not say that you can't go? I'm sorry, Applejack, but I have to. I'm part of the orchestra. If I don't, they had to cancel the tour. All. Applejack could never believe it. She didn't actually thought that it's going to happen. She then said to Octavia, "Well, it seems that you always care about the music more than me, or about us. So if you care about the music more, I'm sorry. Then I don't want to see you anymore." And she just ran away from the house back home. Octavia was heartbroken. It seems that Applejack just broke up with her because she chose to stay with the music business rather than be with her. For the past few weeks, Octavia had actually seen much of Applejack. She had been practicing for most of the concerts in town or some of the local events. But Applejack actually had all the spare time she had to be with Octavia. She didn't even walk out to her home, knock on the door, ask, but sometimes was just vinyl home saying, "No, she isn't home. She told me that she's going to some birthday party downtown." "Oh, she didn't tell you?" "No." And from that moment, Applejack felt she had actually been betrayed. So after that, Vinyl was talking to Octavia, but didn't lead much. Octavia decided to go on the tour, even though she wanted to go up to the farm and talk to Applejack, but she didn't. And after their breakup, Applejack's friend was very curious what just happened, and but she didn't say anything, and she even showed up at the school. For nearly 2 weeks, she wasn't at the school. Her friends was getting worried why she haven't showed up to her teaching, and so they actually went to the farm to talk to her. But when they arrived, it turns out Applejack hasn't been on the farm for 2 weeks either. Her family didn't know where she was. So her friends started immediately looking around the town, asking other ponies if they had seen her, but it turns out no pony has seen Applejack for 2 weeks. And now they even extend the search. They even wrote out the messages to all the Apple family trees members across Equestria to see if they had seen her. But it turns out all of them have said no. No other family members of the Apple family haven't seen Applejack in months, or even heard from her. Where did Applejack go? But in fact, Applejack has actually left Ponyville for good. She was actually heartbroken how much she didn't want to break up with Octavia, but it felt hard. So she actually left town and the farm forever. And a couple of weeks later, Octavia arrived back home, and she had no idea what had happened weeks earlier. When she arrived home, she finds Vinyl sitting at the table, not reading a magazine or eating anything. She was sitting there. "Oh, you're home." Yeah, took the train home about an hour earlier. So, how was the concert? It was okay, I think. All I paid for. So, you haven't heard. Heard what? Well, Applejack is missing. Missing? What do you mean? And then Vinyl explained all the details what she knows about Applejack. At first, Octavia's face was a bit curious and into horror. "So nobody has seen her in weeks? Not even heard a word from her?" Vinyl shook her head. "Now, Octavia was getting even worried. Octavia, don't worry, Applejack can handle herself. And after all, you broke up with her, so maybe perhaps that's a good thing for you to perhaps find somebody else. And then Octavia realized she still loved Applejack even so much. No. What? No! I don't believe that she's gone because of what I did. I'm gonna find her. Octavia, how will you find Applejack when all the opponents has it? But she didn't care. Octavia dropped all her things on the floor and ran out of the house, out of town, and started looking. She didn't care if she didn't have any supplies or any equipment with her from long distance travels. She didn't care. All she wanted to find Applejack and be with her. And then, nearly 2 days later, Octavia was actually still looking. She had traveled several miles from the town and was so tired and so hungry, and she collapsed on the ground. When she woke up a moment later, she was sitting outside a small camp near a cave, and it was a pony there. It was actually Applejack. She actually found Applejack. Or otherwise, Applejack found her. AJ, what are you doing here? Here's my home. Applejack and Octavia had a bit talk for hours. She managed to convince Applejack to come back home, which she did, and she had a very hard time explaining this to her family and friends, but they forgave her. And also, a couple of months later, Octavia actually asked Applejack to marry her. It turns out while she was on her tour, she could even forgive Applejack what she's happened. She wanted to explain this to her, apologize, and even bring and made it good for her again. Applejack had actually been thinking about Octavia for the past few months, and even only the past few weeks since she was gone. And she actually said yes to the proposal right away. At first, it took maybe nearly 2 months before they decided where the wedding is going to be held. They decided either at the city hall, at the farm. They talked back and forward, and they asked who was going to be the bridesmaids, or the flower girl, the ring bearer, who was going to be for the ceremony, what type of food they are going to have, and how many guests they're going to invite. And it turns out they had a bit of arguments about that, but her friends was there to make sure they didn't fight again for this series. And luckily, they had the wedding at the farm since an entire Apple family is going to be coming, which they didn't have any room in the city hall, and some other of Octavia's friends and family. And of course, the wedding was just going well. And after this wedding, they actually held a big party which some of their friends actually organized. And later on, they actually went to Manhattan for 2 weeks for their honeymoon. And about 3 weeks after they had been returning home, one had been asked if they want to start a family, which they actually been talking back and forwards. And they took about a year before they even decided to have a family. Applejack decided to be pregnant at first with help from Twilight with the new spell she had learned. And she had actually twin daughters. When the twins were about 5 years old, Octavia decided to be pregnant also, and she had a son. And it turns out the son was actually very talented man in music like her mother. And that's how Applejack, Octavia, Melody, and the true love got a big family. The end.